All right, so today we're getting together to discuss our required reading for this week, The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. And we found some discussion questions that we're going to go over. So question number 1, in the first chapter, Khalil and Star listen to Tupac in the car. Khalil explains what Tupac said thug life meant. Discuss what this acronym means and how it shows up throughout the book. And how else does the author use hip hop as a motive?
That was a big question full of a lot of things. Let's break that down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, he was saying that the thug life is the hate you give little infants, F's everybody. And I was just thinking that it's about this idea of systemic racism, that it's this trickle down of, Maverick was talking about how corporate America doesn't invest in their community and that it's a system that's designed against them. So it's not just against people like Maverick, but it's against his children and anyone that's born after him.
Yeah,
No,
I'm pretty familiar with Tupac. I've listened to him my whole life. I still do, actually. I'm from a small urban community in Florida, and I never knew that. And I didn't even realize that looking at the cover of the book. And whenever Khalil talked about that and those first couple chapters, I was like, how have I been so immersed in this music and this culture for so long, and I still had no idea about that part of his music. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I didn't know about it either until I watched the video of Angie Thomas talking about kind of her inspiration for writing the book, and then she explained that, and I was like, oh, did not even realize.
I kept focusing on the fact that, because this is my second time reading the book, and in one of our discussions that we have to go back and talk about how we feel about it and how Angie Thomas made it for hope, I started talking about the fact that as a 20-something-year-old, young 20-something-year-old, I got a very different reaction on it because I was focusing on Star. As a 29-year-old, as a mom, someone who's been around the block a little bit more and just has life experience, I kept focusing on the fact that Star specifically was like, Tupac's old. And every time, everyone around her would be like, but he's not. It's still very real time. It's still very relatable. And I kept going back to that section of the book every time of just like it stands out for Thug about the fact that no matter where in history it takes place, the book is about the fact that as times have changed, it really hasn't changed all that often as much.
Which is a little depressing.
Yeah.
Just a lot.
What was your next question, Jessica? Jessica, you had another question.
It also asked about how the author uses hip hop throughout the story as kind of like a motive. So, they kept referring back to that thug life, but even just there were several times throughout the book where they would play a certain song as they were like driving around and the riots were happening and, right before the tear gas. And so there were certain songs where he was singing kind of those hope, songs where it's like, let's slow down, let's think about what's happening, we can be a voice of change and, things like that where, she kept saying, well, he's old, whatever. And they kept saying, but no, it's relevant to what's happening now. And so I thought it was really neat how she kept, tying in his music throughout the whole book.
Yeah, I think it's also super relevant to the characters in the book and kind of their everyday life, and then being familiar with so much rap music also, I felt like those times other songs were mentioned in the book. Like I think there was I'm drawing a blank now, but like those songs are about oppression and overcoming and like not giving up and finding a way out of difficult situations. So I thought that was really smart of her to plug those things in, because I could also identify with the music. I was kind of singing it in my head as they were going through the lyrics in the book. I thought that was really clever of her.
Yeah.
So hitting off that point of, as cheesy as it sounds, they kept bringing up the Fresh Prince song, and that's a form of hip hop and a form of rap. And I can relate to that. Anyone who's grew up in the 90s, 80s can relate to the Fresh Prince. And I loved how it was a way for, because they joke about, oh, well, that's a white point of view. And Chris, what's his name? Chris,
yeah.
Yes, go me. Chris talks about, oh, that must be a white thing. But Fresh Prince brings in both sides of race, and it ends up being a unified topic versus a separating topic. Whereas constantly with the book, you see this dichotomy of race being a separation, and then Fresh Prince comes in and everyone's happy-go-lucky again. There's that reconnection you're constantly seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never really, I see what you're saying now, but I didn't think about like the Fresh Prince being, Will Smith being, that was really a new thing for him to bridge, the Black community with pulling in white with hip hop. And like, I remember, I do not, I don't really know Tupac songs. That is like so out of my world, but I totally watched the Fresh Prince every day after school, 6th grade. So even someone like me who doesn't, like, you're playing the songs in your head as they're doing the lyrics driving down the road, I did not pick up on that. I bet if I watched the movie that they probably play those songs so that I would understand that and hear that, but I totally connected with the Fresh Prince. Like I would have been on like Chris's side.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to be curious about that world and just being vulnerable, like to learn about it. I loved that scene in the car when he's asking them questions and they're making fun of the food and the macaroni and cheese with, what do you say, breadcrumbs on top. That's kind of like a running joke, but I just loved the vulnerability in that of this is how you do it, and this is how you love one another, and this is how you learn about one another, even if you aren't from the culture of hip hop or that background, that she shows us how to do it.
Whether you realize it or not, you just made a bridge with hip hop with this is how we do it.
Oh, that's funny. One of my favorite scenes from the book, and like I said, second time reading it, and it stuck with me all of these years, is they're in the car later on and they're asking Chris questions, but then Chris is like, okay, but I should get a chance to ask y'all a question, and he asks about Star's name. That scene constantly goes back to me, and he's like, why do y'all have weird names? And he says, well, what? And Davion, right? Devontae, thank you. All the names are getting mixed up. Devontae gets really offensive, and then they calm back down and like, but what really classifies as weird or unusual. And this time reading it, I caught on to when Maverick talks about why their names are their names at Seven's graduation party / birthday party, which I did it before. And that one scene of the fact that I'm white. I have a very white background, even though I have a different ethnicity and I have a background, everyone does. I essentially am very, very white. And so when I was reading the book the first time, and I saw names like Star or Seven, I was like, that's a little weird. And since reading that for the first time, it has really stuck with me that just because I classify something as weird doesn't mean it's actually weird. It's just my lens of how I view things. So how did y'all lenses change throughout the book?
I'd love to jump in on that. That is the most poignant part of this entire experience reading this book for me, because I have conversations often. I'm married to a woman, so I'm not necessarily the majority when it comes to like family and things from back home. And there's oftentimes conversations that are had in my presence. People say culturally insensitive or blatantly racist things, and they have no idea that what they're saying is insensitive or hurtful to people. So then when I try to break those things down, their response kind of always, I didn't mean it like that. Well, I understand that your intention is not to be insensitive or hurtful to someone on a stereotype or a comment that you make that's kind of considered normal, where maybe you have these conversations with other people. And I try really hard to kind of enlighten people about that, because there were so many times in the book that I love that when it was Star and Haley's relationship, that Haley says things that are culturally insensitive, like to their Asian friend about them eating cat for Thanksgiving, that Haley didn't recognize that what she was doing was wrong. And Star explained to her, you may not recognize what you're doing as hurtful or harmful, but the things you're saying, they are that. And you don't see it because you kind of have this like privilege in front of you because you're not treated that way. And I fortunately have had a lot of conversations with a lot of my friends in that context. And I think that that's the most important thing about reading this book, is for people to be self-aware that maybe some typical things people say, or like normal things people say, that those things stem from hurtful places and they affect people. And I don't think it's people's intention most of the time to be that way. But that is what I think is the most powerful point of reading this book.
Yeah,
Thanks for
and
coming.
I think that there are going, it kind of shows people there are going to be people like Haley, and she just didn't care, and she knew, she just didn't care. But yet the majority in the book that she presents do care, and I loved that Haley is outnumbered, and that the majority of people, Maya and Chris and Kenya and Seven and Devante, they have this desire to love one another and build bridges. And I think that I like to think that that is the majority, that the majority of people do desire that. And it just takes being vulnerable and being willing to say, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And I think it teaches, like, if I just imagine if this were in a book club in a high school setting, it shows them how to handle that, because they may not see it from their parents, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is the generation that's going to take those risks and to try to merge our worlds.
Your comment stuck with me about the majority. When the mom and Star are sitting eating pancakes, and mom says, make a list. What's good is good and what's bad is bad, to paraphrase, very much so. And if there's more good than bad, then keep her. And if there's more bad than good, then get rid of her. And Star goes back to that over and over. And it's the fact that the mom, even though she openly admits, she gets Star to openly admit the fact that she does not like Haley, just as a mom, she doesn't like her. Taking away Haley's viewpoints, even though I'm sure as a mom we notice that, all of the viewpoints and all the things that change our children's views. But as a mom, she doesn't like Haley. But the mom tells Star to accept her if her friend aligns with what she wants out of her life. And so the fact that her mom is willing to accept all the faults of this girl who is not even 18 yet, this very, very naive girl who doesn't understand. The mom even says that. She's naive, she doesn't understand, but if you are willing to look past all of that and there's more good than there is bad, then keep going with her. And that hits on what you were saying, Ashley.